Welcome to Inside Abode, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Dave Jones, and you are here for another episode of Inside Abode. And today we're going to talk about fair housing. So April was National Fair Housing Month, and we talked about the Covenant Home Loan Program the last episode. And I just wanted to, and hopefully you liked that. Hopefully that was, informative for you. I want to take the time to just let our listeners know you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free. We're going to continue to have more information on here. We'll talk about the housing market in the next episode, so don't miss that. That's going to be coming up after this episode, so probably sometime next week. I'll get in on that so that you can give you an update on what's going on there. But I just want to take a little bit of time today. It's May Day, so May 1st, which also happens to be founder of Windermere Abode's birthday, Ann Jones, and also my wife. And so we're celebrating her today. But I do want to talk a little bit about fair housing. We didn't get a chance this last month. It's actually really busy. That's why I do want to talk about the market, but it's really busy. And so I want to just get some time to get in here and talk about fair housing in Tacoma from a Tacoma lens. So really super specific. So let's dive into it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, great, awesome. This is probably the best way to watch it. Or on Spotify, they show the videos as well, because what I'm going to be doing is going to tacomafairhousing.com, which is a site that takes all this information from different sources of people around Tacoma who've done the great work at, the Tacoma Urban Studies and NAR. There's some stuff, and I'll show those sources, so you can go source them if you want to from the tacomafairhousing.com website. So let's take a look. Let's dive in. So I'm gonna go. So where I want to start is we're going to talk about, there was some great research on, the different, let me see, the restrictive covenants. So the UW Urban Studies, UW Tacoma, has done really great work on this subject. You can see here in Pierce County by the numbers, there's 5,400 parcels that carry restrictive language today. So that's a lot, and those are properties right now that probably on your title or somewhere that there's some type of racial covenants on there that don't allow anybody that's non-white to purchase the home. Now, obviously it's not enforceable, but it still remains on these titles and deeds. And, like maybe it's on yours. And if you're listening, then go look, it could potentially could have them. And based on the area, it's almost guaranteed. And here, let me just explain a little bit more. So let's take a look at the Tacoma neighborhood. So based on the redlining map, so if you're listening to this, hopefully you know what redlining is. If not, you can go to segregatedbydesign.com. It is a 17-minute video that basically explains redlining and how it came about and all those kinds of things. It's a really good video. It's a good explainer type video, but it's animated. And it's based off the book, The Color of Law, which is a really thick, dense book, and it's really good. But yeah, if you want the 17-minute video, go watch that and then come back, and this will make a lot more sense. But if you already know what redlining is, or you have a general idea, you'll be fine. So these are the Tacoma neighborhoods. You can see, and based on the redlining map, like where was a great place to, or what was called the best, like places that they were going to lend and provide, financing to. So North End, Proctor, obviously green, which is best. That's widespread. It's new subdivisions built with exclusions, overwhelmingly white in 1940s. Affluent, obviously you have waterfront and things of that nature. And basically a lot of those were the area is downgraded if there were presence of, black families. So it says here, 3 black families in Proctor were specifically cited by realtors as seriously detracting from the desirability of their immediate neighborhood. The area is graded down because of their presence. That's crazy. All right, so let's take a look at West End Narrowmore. And actually, on this page, there's another section that has information around that. So 1937, the HOLC grade was A to B in Narrowmore and West End. So Narrowmore's covenant is one of the most cited examples in the UW Covenants project. This language is explicit. No part or parcel of land or improvement thereon shall be rented or leased to or used or occupied in whole or in part by any person or African or Asiatic descent, nor by any person not of white or Caucasian race, is still in the deed chain today, and that is in West End, Narrowmore. So if you live in Tacoma, you know where these places are. But like, I would like, yeah, go check it out. Go look at them. Don't take my word for it. Go and look. So if you're watching this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but obviously Hilltop, East Side. Let's take a look at those. Those are in the red. So red is D, and when it's redlined, that is seen as hazardous. So they're not going to basically, give you a mortgage in those places, or if you do, you get a shoddy situation there. Hilltop was redlined despite street improvements and proximity to downtown. HOLC's own notes called the population inharmonious. Decades of denied investment followed. Today, exactly because laws against redlining now require banks to lend here, the neighborhood is gentrifying fast, and longtime residents often can't benefit from using the rising values because they were never allowed to build equity in the first place. So everyone knows in Tacoma where Hilltop is, and let's look at East Side, Salishan. Let's see here. The East Side illustrates how wartime necessity briefly loosened Tacoma's color line, then how the line snapped back after 1945. Many black families living here had moved into homes that had been seized by Japanese Americans sent to World War II incarceration camps. When Japanese Americans returned, the housing situation was fraught on every side. So, to that, I am a quarter Japanese. I am black and Japanese. There's a whole black and Japanese contingent in Tacoma, and I am part of that descent, of people. So, that's what makes this really interesting is, my Japanese heritage, how it came to be. My grandma was full Japanese, and we lived in, all the Japanese and black folk lived in a certain area in terms of just the biracial Japanese and black folks that came from World War II. So, this is real actual history, of our city, and it's pretty dope to read and just see. So sundown towns, the next section down if you're on TacomaFairHousing.com, there's different sections, and there's one on sundown towns. Did you know that there are sundown towns, or were sundown towns in Pierce County? And which ones, where were they? What cities were those? Well, let's take a look. So what is a sundown town? So if you're asking what that is, it's basically a community that excluded black residents and often other people of color and indigenous folks and Jewish residents and whoever. Basically, when the sun goes down, don't be around. And if it is down and you're in town, then yeah, you're gonna get got. So how to read the map? The UW project mapped suspected sundown communities using 1970 census household data. The color key is blunt on purpose. So there's a map that you can actually go to. You can open this Washington Sundown Towns map, and it goes to the Racial Restrictive Covenants Project based on Washington.edu, so the UW. So this is super dope though, but you can look at the sundown towns all over Washington. Like, look at this. They're everywhere, basically. All right, let's take a look at the map. The sundown towns. We're just going to go through the different areas. I'm going to just name them off, and this is in Tacoma and surrounding areas that were sundown towns in 1970. So just to think about that, I was born in 1978. This map is from 1970. Okay. I moved out to Gig Harbor or my mom and my family, we moved out in the mid 80s. Okay. So that's 15 years approximately after this map, the numbers from this map. So just really chew on that real quick. And so you think about like how I grew up and what's going on there and my experiences that I've had. So first one I'll talk about is Gig Harbor. So Gig Harbor, black households 0, black residents 0, Asian or other 7, indigenous 6, white 1,644 residents is on the list. 1 black household, 2 black residents, 12 Asian or other, 16 indigenous, and white 638. Furcrest, where I currently live, 4 black households, 18 black residents, 36 Asian or other, 16 indigenous, 5,581 white. I'm not going to go through all the races for each one, but that just gives you an idea of like what's going on. But I'm going to go through, you got University Place on here, you got DuPont. You can go look at this yourself at TacomaFairHousing.com. We got Fife, we have Milton, we have Pacific, we have Algona, we have Auburn, we have Sumner, we have Puyallup, we have Bonnie Lake, and we have Ording just in this area right here. Now, you can go back and like look at different parts of it, but I think that that's important to look at that. Some of you might not be surprised by that information. I'm certainly not, because I've, know this history and whatnot, but I think it's good for people to know and understand like why places became how they are demographically. It's not because people don't like to live in certain areas. These areas are all desirable places to live. That's not what anyone is saying at all. It's just that, yeah, I don't want to go there for my safety. It's a sundown town. And even if you say that it's not at a certain point, the fact that it was in 1970 should tell you all you need to know, even 15 years later. You don't think that you just change and all of a sudden you go, oh, well, we're not a sundown town no more. Nah, the remnants of that stick even today, these are generational, like behaviors in different communities. I'm not saying it's racist right now in general. I'm just saying that there are still remnants of these practices in different communities, and we have to be aware of that. And the people that live there have to be aware of that, so that people can be safe and feel safe in these communities, because they're all great places to live. There's great people in them, all that kind of stuff. All right. So let's keep going. Tacoma specifically, I'm going to go past that. Oh, this is the Narrowmore story that I was talking about. So Harold Moss, Tacoma's first black mayor, recalling his 90s home search. Segregation light, quote, just as deadly but refined for the Northwest palate. That's pretty funny. So basically how the Narrowmore Clause, so one covenant in the Narrowmore edition in Tacoma's West End reads, no part or parcel of land shall be rented or leased or used or occupied in whole or in part by any person of African or Asiatic descent, nor by any person not of white or Caucasian race other than domestic servants. It's not enforceable, but it does hurt to read that. So let's keep going and just look at this timeline. So 1910s, the first covenants appear in Tacoma. Developers write racial exclusions into new subdivision deeds, believing it protects property values. And then in 1926, Corrigan versus Buckley, Supreme Court affirms covenants as constitutional. U.S. usage explodes nationally through the 1940s. So it affirmed the covenants as constitutional, the covenants that we're talking about. That's crazy, bro. 37, Tacoma's HOLC residential security map. The federal government draws color-coded maps, green, yellow, and red. Now look at this. So think about this in this term. 1910s, the first covenants appear, the racial covenants that have racial exclusions. If 1937, so 27 years, think about the equity just in that time frame is amassed during that time. So that's what, 27 years? So in 27 years, what's 27 years from right now? It's 26. So if you bought a house in the mid to late 90s, do you think you'd have a lot of equity in your house right now? The answer is absolutely, right? So now multiply that times more, because now that's 27 years. Now think about 47 years, how much that's going to be for a family. And you're excluding different families from this opportunity. And hopefully, if you start thinking about it that way, you can just kind of figure out like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of compounding of generational wealth that's occurred. In 1948, Shelley versus Kramer, racially restrictive covenants ruled unenforceable in court, but the private agreements remain legal. AR's predecessor considered pushing for a constitutional amendment in response. In 1964, the Tacoma's open house referendum fails. And then in 1968, you had the Fair Housing Act, which was enacted 1 week after Martin Luther King's assassination. So imagine if MLK didn't get assassinated. Will we even have the Fair Housing Act in 1968? Something to chew on. And then we go from there. And then in 2023, actually, we have the Covenant Homeownership Act. I skipped over a couple, but I have the Washington Covenant Homeownership Act. Washington becomes the first state to fund down payment and closing cost assistance for people and descendants who were harmed by racially restricted covenants funded by a $100 bump to the recording fee, estimated $75 million a year. That's why we did that podcast. The last podcast is, educating people on the covenant program, why it exists. And this is just more education on that. So you think about 2023. Oh, 1910 was the first, let's see, 2023 minus 1910. Let's see. That is 113 years of equity. So some of y'all been in your house for like 8 years or 5 years or 3 years. Think about 113 years. That's a long time. And the reason why I still count the years after the Homeownership Act, well, let's just go down and look at some more stuff. So the home ownership gap, as you can see from 1970 moving forward, has not really changed. From the time that the Fair Housing Act was enacted, Black people have the same, if not a little bit lower. Now, there have been parts in time, points in time where it did increase and the gap did get better. But overall, in large part, you can see here, look at the map, it's pretty much just stayed stagnant. So for the most part, we talk about down payment and why that's tough for people. And then we get into, that's the race aspect of it. There's other aspects of fair housing, of course, because it's based on, our protected classes. So do you know what our protected classes are? That's something to think about. Do you even know? I mean, if you don't, it's okay. I'm just saying that we don't typically go through I don't think that a lot of people are thinking about this like every single day, but just do think about it when you're talking about buying a house, when you're talking about why a school's demographics are the way they are, or you're driving through a neighborhood and you're like, oh, why is it? And you have something to say about it. Well, that's cool. But also, do you understand the history of why and how people got there and who lives there? I think that that's just something to think about and ruminate on. All right, so the 7 protected classes that are federal protected classes are race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. Now, this is just for the state of Washington that we have that's above and beyond. So, for example, I was teaching a class in Montana and Helena, and they have, I think, political affiliation is one of their protected classes. So that's different than here. I don't know if we have that on here. So in Washington, this is what's above that. So creed, marital status, sexual orientation, that's been explicit since 2006, gender identity, which is explicit, honorably discharged veteran or military status, source of income. You can't discriminate based on source of income. You can't discriminate based on use of a trained dog or service animal. That is a protected class. And citizenship or immigration status is also a fair housing. Also is a protected class. So when you think about that, think about who's getting what's happening. Then the next section talks about LGBTQ plus clients and where they get stuck. I think that that's a good one to talk about as well. Again, we have protections here in Washington State, which is why some people opt in to move up here. So 4 to 5% LGBTQ plus share of home buyers and sellers are based on NAR's data. So from 2021 to 2024, 4 to 5%, and then rising with Gen Z. And that should be interesting because 23% identify as LGBTQ plus. That wasn't a thing when I was growing up. So I think that number is only going to increase, hopefully. And, I think that that's just, important. And I think it's inevitable, actually. If we talk about that, I think it's inevitable. I think, let's see. What's another one that jumps out here? Live one person and at least one sacrifice. I think with the LGBTQ buyers, I think you can look at the numbers, but a lot of times it's in the nuances. So things like, and we'll have some folks on to talk about that because I think it's the nuances of things. Like, I don't want to put my name on that application because I might get discriminated against, or, depending on, everyone's at a different phase of their LGBTQ journey, and so that's another part is I don't know who's going to discriminate against me if I do this, or or someone knows, or I have, I'm competing with someone on something and our names are on the paper, and, someone's going to go, and all of a sudden implicit bias comes into play. So, those are real things to worry about. And there's definitely probably so many others. I can't speak to it because I haven't lived that experience, but I mean, I know that they exist because of the different types of experiences I've had. So there's other fair housing. So like 55 and up communities, there's, rules around that, and fair housing rules around that. Section 8, we have you know, some different situations and scenarios on here. And then we rounded out with some questions that might sound innocent, but could be fair housing, and some potential answers that you might get. Overall, I think this is a good site. And here's all of the sources. I did not get these. Windermere Abode did not get these. We just wanted a place where all of this good stuff lives, so that you can actually take a look at it. We have an equity index map in Tacoma, which is really cool, for the city of Tacoma that created that. The UW Covenants Project, so UW Tacoma, shout out to them. They did some great work. The Pierce County Auditor site, NAR Magazine. So, the sources are down here at the bottom. You can take a look at those if you want to go to the actual source. And then there's an action to check your covenants map, and then also get the modification form. If you are interested in doing, a modification or checking out your title, or just give us a call here at Windermere Abode. We'll help you, at least point you in the right direction. But I try to do that at the bottom of the screen. So anyway, that's what I have today. I just wanted to make sure that we got a little bit of fair housing chat in here, and everyone's busy right now. It's really a busy. It's our busy season, our busiest time of the year. So I want to make sure that people have time to, go get their houses and whatnot. And we're going to get some more market data next week. But with that, again, hit that subscribe button. We'll be back next week. Inside Abode, y'all. Peace.